Hi everybody, Skip here, and here we are for giveaway January, and we are really blessed today because we've got somebody who is living proof that what this person teaches, what this person speaks about is in total integrity with how you can adopt these tools and these strategies and these ideas so that you can live a happy, healthy lifestyle. Because ultimately, when we come down to living, it doesn't matter what we've got in the bank account. It doesn't matter what toys we have, what houses. If we're not happy, if we're not loving ourselves in the process, then we're not enjoying life at its fullest. And this is somebody who's gone from being really connected to the pharmaceutical world to being a very well-known author and a speaker, and is a lot of fun to be around. Is a lot of fun when this person's on stage and doing his workshops. And it is the one and only Mr. David Hamilton.
Hi Skip, how are you today?
Very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah. Good.
Perfect. So this week, this month, we're doing what we call like giveaway January, where we just really are giving people some golden nuggets, some seeds of wisdom, so that they can really kickstart their year off, so that 2016 can become their best year ever. And for the people that may not know you, I mean, give us a brief intro of really where you've come from and why you're doing what you're doing now.
Well, basically, as you said, an ex-pharmaceutical scientist. I used to work in the pharmaceutical industry making drugs. I used to build drugs for heart disease and cancer. That's what I did my PhD on, was building drugs. It's called organic chemistry. It's not nothing to do with organic food. It's basically a way of sticking atoms together. But I did that, and I became really fascinated with the mind-body connection, especially by when you spent $250 million a company has in developing a drug, and then you test it, and you find that in a test 75% of people improve on the drug, and you think, well, that's great, but then you find 50% or 60% or something 70% even, depending, improve on the placebo because they think they're getting the drug. So that for me was so fascinating that I eventually just resigned. I worked in the industry for 4 years, and then I resigned because I wanted to teach. I wanted to teach people about their own capabilities, especially in harnessing this mind-body connection, and also understanding and harnessing our capacity for compassion and how that can have an effect on the body, how that can have effect on the world, if you like. So I left the industry after 4 years and just started writing books and teaching courses, workshops, lectures ever since.
Wow. And I know you've done an amazing job, because you have to be one of those people in the industry where, in my opinion, you really are one of those people in the industry where no matter who I'm talking to, whether it's people who've gone to your talks, whether it's people who have read your books, whether it's people who are organizing the events, every single person who I talk to about you always has good things to say about you. I actually haven't found one person out there that has said anything bad about what you do. So there's something that you're doing which is having such an effect on everyone that you come in connection with. And one of the things I've learned about life is we can take a different us into different situations. And of course we want to do that sometimes, where, if we're going into the gym, sometimes we want to get focused on really giving our all. Now, if we take that athlete into our relationship, that might not be the best hat for us to wear. But what I found is no matter what hat you're wearing, you have this gift where you can really have such a positive impact on people. And your new book is causing some amazing things in the marketplace. So please tell us about that, because I know that you've got the essence of you going into that book. So please really tell us about that, because I know it's really helping people in such a big way.
Yeah, thanks for saying such nice things there, Skip. I didn't recognise myself when you were talking. Yeah, so the book's called I Heart Me. It's the strapline, The Science of Self-Love. And I basically wrote that because I needed to learn self-love for myself. Despite my job, as a writer and a speaker, I always struggled with self-confidence and self-belief, always. And the thing is, nobody can tell. I mean, when I'm giving a talk on in front of an audience. I mean, no one has any idea what's going on in my head, and you're probably the same. Everyone has their stuff, and I'd really struggled with self-love, which manifested itself as self-belief issues, self-confidence. It's affected so many aspects of my life. And I had a crisis. I had almost, you could call it an anxiety attack at the side of the stage a couple of years ago when I was due to speak right after Dr. Wayne Dyer, the late Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he had always been my hero. When I first left the pharmaceutical industry and decided this is what I want to do, I modeled myself on Wayne Dyer, meaning that I watched what he did and I watched how he did what he did. And his message was of generosity of spirit and love and compassion. And I thought that so resonates with where I am and what I want to be teaching. So I used to look up to him almost like a mentor, if you like, and how he did the things, how he presented himself and all that kind of stuff. And here I was at the side of the stage. I was the next speaker after him, and it was an amazing honor. And I had an anxiety attack before I came on, and it wasn't really to do with self-confidence. It was self-belief. And it was like a little voice in my head was saying, like, who do you think you are? You can't possibly follow Wayne Dyer and all these other speakers. They've got something important to say. They've sold, millions of books. They deserve to be here. But you're just a little guy from that tiny little village in central Scotland. Get back home. That's the sentiment that I was feeling. And it was like a deep sense of a deep lack of worthiness. It was like, if I could define it, it was an absence of an inner sense of worthiness and value. To be really honest, Skip, I just wanted to I want to find a corner of the backstage and curl up in a curtain and cry. That's honestly how I felt. And after that experience, I went on stage because I had to. There's 1,000 people waiting on me. I had to go on stage. And once, within 2 or 3 minutes there, I was in the zone. I was doing what I loved doing, and it was all forgotten. But I realized on that day, and it was after sharing a really great conversation with a now good friend of mine, Anita Murjani, who was speaking that day as well. And Anita was talking about a near-death experience she'd had several years ago. And that in her near-death experience, in that moment, she understood that the single most important thing that humans have to learn is how to love themselves, because almost every one of our problems, if you dissect and cut down through the layers of crap that we put there on top of all these beliefs, most of the time it comes down to a lack of self-love. And I realized so deeply that is what I need to do. It's not about trying to be more confident or trying to believe in myself more. I need to tackle this lack of worthiness and value that I've always carried all throughout my life, but it just never acknowledged it to myself. And that's when I decided I need to learn this. And knowing myself well enough, I knew that I could be full of good intentions and I could start doing self-love work on myself, but I probably would get distracted and give up after a few months. So I realized that the only way, knowing myself well enough, the only way I would actually follow through and do as much work as was necessary was if I wrote a book on it, because I'd have to do the work then. So I just contacted Hay House and I said, look, this is my next book. This is what I'm going to do. And they totally got behind me on it. And so it took me 2 years, which is 4 times longer than most of my books tend to take to write. And that's because, I had to learn self-love. And obviously I'm a slow learner, really, because I had to learn to feel an inner sense of worthiness and value. And that isn't something that comes in a day, if you like. So that's the background to the book. It was really out of necessity. It was to solve my own, some of my own real deep struggles in life that I've always struggled with. So the book just was a side effect of that journey, and the side effect meaning that it was actually crucial, because I wouldn't have got to where I am now if it hadn't been for the book. I had to write the book to immerse myself in the subject for that long a period of time.
Awesome. Well, I know one of the things that, as teachers, as speakers, we always teach what we need to learn. Yeah. And please tell us, I know there'll be so many people out there who see you on stage and go like, wow, this guy wasn't loving himself. Because I know that when you're on stage and you're in the zone, it's a lot easier for us to open up, because we really put the audience first, and we really... and I know you have this, you echo this, because I've seen you on stage and I've done, events with you as well. And I've seen the effect that you have on the audience, so that what comes through you, you vibe off the audience. And although you might have a framework for, right, these are the points that I want to get across, depending on where the audience are at, that's where you meet them. But when we're out of that zone, that's the stuff that you're talking about, because then you come back to this sort of like base set point, this loving myself set point. Right, is it natural for me to love myself? Is it natural for me to feel happy? Is it natural for me to feel good just waking up every single day and really loving who I am exactly the way I am, not when I've achieved this or when I've achieved that? So for you, what were some of the little golden nuggets? Like if we could give somebody who might be watching this, what could be some tips, or a tip that, because for them, I know, oh, it sounds great, but how do I do this? And I know it's not, you can't just turn it around like that. It's like, you can't wake up one day and say, right, now I've got the body I deserve. It takes conditioning, and it's a lifestyle habit that we have to get in the groove of. And then we start to do the right thing again and again and again without actually having to think about it, because it's part of who we are. So what could be a few little golden nugget tips?
First of all, you said something I thought was quite important. Before that, when I was teaching in front of an audience, when we're lacking in self-love, it's not like it's there all the time. There are certain environments where we feel really enough, but there's a lot of other environments we feel not enough. So when I was teaching people, I was doing what I loved, so I really felt enough. So it didn't really come across then. It was before I started and after I finished where the issues came in. But one of the major strategies that I found immensely helpful to me was, because of my scientific training, the first question I asked myself when I thought, well, I need to solve that, I need to find a way of loving myself, but how do I do that? Do I just say to myself, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself? There is benefits in that, and certain types of people gain from that kind of stuff. It depends where you are, I suppose. But for me, I thought, when we're born, no one is born as an infant, as a baby, lacking in self-love. When you're a baby, you haven't even learned that you're separate from everyone else. I mean, a baby up until a particular period of growth doesn't realize that it's not it thinks itself as one with all things, right? So it's a lack of self-love, a lack of worthiness and value. That's something that we learn. Whether we learn it mostly in the first 6 or 7 years of life, but other people learn it later in their life, teenage years, etc. But learning, when it comes to the brain, really just distills down to the formation of little connections in the brain. And that's what learning is. And I figured, well, I know enough about neuroscience from my own scientific training to understand how to rewire portions of the brain. And you said it there, it's habits. We have to be consistent with our behavior. And the thing is, we tend not to understand about brain wiring, because mostly our consistent behavior is what it's always been. So therefore, what we're wiring into the brain is what we've always wired in. So therefore, the issues that we have tend to get worse until something breaks. So one of my strategies was, okay, when I'm in an environment where I'm lacking in self-love, it comes across in your body, because you probably noticed, and most people watching this probably noticed, that you're always talking in your own head. And so what's in your own mind, because of how that makes you feel, because of the link between your brain and your muscles, your body and your posture and your breathing, your facial expressions, your shoulder, your breathing, your posture, all of that actually reflects the contents of your mind. So what if you're thinking of people that you love, thinking of stuff that makes you feel happy, then your body will actually be stronger. It'll be holding itself in a different way than if you're thinking about stuff that makes you feel scared, or people that you're having stressful issues with. All of that causes a tension in your body, and it's an automatic reflex reaction, because your emotional regions of the brain are connected to your muscles. So I figured, if I can catch myself several times a day, become aware of myself several times a day when I'm not feeling enough, and notice what my body's doing, and then correct it. So instead of doing that, I'm exaggerating so that you can see, instead of being afraid, what if in those situations I did that? I maybe lengthened my spine, lifted my head even an inch, just a tiny little move to my head, breathed from my tummy, relaxed my shoulders, lengthened my spine. What if I did that instead? And I did this relentlessly. So it became such a habit for me that even when I got out of the car, as I walked to the house, I'd lengthen my spine, lift my head up, shoulders back a bit, and I'd walk in a relaxed fashion in a way that says I am enough. In the morning, my spiritual practice became, standing like, like Wonder Woman or Superman, but not in a look at me, I'm super strong kind of way, but preserving that softness and compassion. So I'd breathe with a softness and compassion to my face, but having my spine strong in a way that if my body was saying something, it would be saying, I am enough. I have an inner sense of worthiness and value. Yes, I'm flexible, but I'm strong at the same time. I have an inner sense of worthiness and value. And that became my spiritual practice, 2 minutes every morning, then walking around the room, saying these things, but wearing them on my body for a minute or two, and then catching myself or becoming aware of myself several times throughout the day. I knew that as I was doing that, I was spending less and less time in a physiological state of not enough. So therefore, the brain regions, the wiring of that, because I'm not feeding that, the brain regions begin to shrink like a muscle that you're not using. And at the same time, the brain regions of I am enough, which is conveyed in my new body language, are beginning to grow like a muscle that I'm exercising. And I found after a couple of months, 2, 3 months, 4 months even of practice, I noticed a considerable difference in how I felt, because the brain was actually changing. The wiring of the brain was changing from I am not enough into I am enough. And therefore, as the wiring changes, the biology changes, your emotions change. And I started to feel from the inside out, really for the first time in my life on a consistent basis, an inner sense of worthiness and value, something that was absent from my emotions or how I felt about myself for most of my life, and the process is of wiring the brain is called neuroplasticity. So I really because that's what I knew and understood about the brain, I used that as a strategy for building self-love. But I wasn't aware before I started it just how much of an effect it would have, but it really had a considerable effect. And the research behind using body language and how that changes your biology was done by a fantastic professor at Harvard called Amy Cuddy. And you should watch her TED Talk, Amy Cuddy, fantastic. And it's called a power pose. Within 1 or 2 minutes of standing like that, you can radically shift your biology in terms of how it says stress or how it says confidence. And all I did was adapted that and said, well, if you move a muscle consistently, you go beyond changing biology into wiring the brain. So that became my self-love strategy, and it's wonderfully effective, I found.
Wow, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, you explain it with so much. This is what I love about you when you speak, that you can take real academic stuff, but break it down where it just makes sense to the academic or the common person, whoever might be listening, because this is one of the gifts that communicators, speakers have, where they can take something and just give it to people so it becomes tangible and they can take practical action to get the same results. And one of the things that I found, and this still blows my mind, that when I do events all over the world, one of the first questions I ask is, hands up if you believe that we're our thoughts. And it is getting less and less as the year goes on, but it's still the majority of the audience, their hands go up. And I say, so guys, so what happens if you have a bad thought, or if you have something that could be producing an emotion which will lead to a thought of, I'm just not enough. I don't feel confident in who I am. And as you said, you can go into these stages in these environments where you have to turn it on, you have to be in the zone, and you can deliver. But if you come back to that basic set point where you still feel I'm not enough, and I know I've been there, I know there are so many people out there that, we get taught to wear these masks. We have to be a certain person in a certain environment to be accepted. Yeah. And usually that isn't the core essence of who we are, because the truth is, as you know this, if you genuinely take the real you into the situation, every time you know that that's enough. But when people fall into the trap of the thoughts dictating, or basically the thoughts being the driver of this ship, and people can actually get to the point where they realize, right, I'm not even my thoughts and I'm not my emotions, but I'm the creator of my thoughts and emotions. The second that switch has happened, I've seen a total paradigm shift in people's reality. And doing these simple things, because what I've learned about, and I know I really want to emphasize on what you've just said so people really get this, because if you're having a negative thought pattern and it can be fired off by so many different triggers, so many different anchors, and you go back to a basic way of thinking or being that may not be serving you at your best, it's impossible to have another thought to get you out of that situation because you're already in it. And the only way we can really get those benefits is by jolting the physiology. I mean, the basic stats now for communication, whether it's to other people or to ourselves, as you know this, 7 or 8% is in the words, 33% is how we express the words, over 50% is in the physiology. So all of what you're saying about just standing there, standing strong, breathing differently, unless people try this, all that happens is another dose of information is going to go in, but then it's not going to serve you. And the people who are watching this, who are listening to this, please listen to what he's saying and try it. I mean, how long did it take for you to start to notice some little shifts? Because all we want to be looking for are those tiny little shifts in how we're feeling through life. And as soon as we see a little shift, okay, so what did I do that made that little shift? And then we can start to develop those habits, because that's all it comes down to, is creating the habits that serve us, that serve the people around us, and serve the greater good. As soon as we're locked into that frequency or that way of living, life really does become a different journey. So how long do you think it will take people to notice these differences?
To be honest, I noted when I made an adjustment, even when I was out on the street walking, I noticed a difference immediately. Right? And that's a very important thing. That's what Amy Cuddy at Harvard found as well, that just 2 minutes, even a minute actually, of standing in a posture that she calls a power pose, standing in a posture that feels confident on the inside, it causes a significant reduction in the stress hormone cortisol and a significant boost in hormones associated with self-confidence. Right? And that happens within 1 or 2 minutes. I've noticed, I'm aware of the feeling, because when you shift biology like that, it's always going to affect how you feel.
And also, like, you know, if you see people who are down and depressed, their whole physiology's down, they're looking down, they're talking down, and all you're talking about is an instant shift.
Yeah. So I noticed an immediate shift, but when I practiced it consistently, the habit itself began to take over, because after a couple of months of practice, what you find is it wires into the brain enough that the change in your state, rather than it just being up there every time you do this and then gradually falling back down, up there when you do it, gradually falling back down, it goes up there and stays there most of the time by itself, because you've wired it in as a habit. And the reason this works like this is because, you know, it's an evolutionary thing. The way that the human body has genetically evolved, you know, millions of years ago, the human species learned, long before language became the norm for the human species. Language is a relatively recent phenomena in the whole span of evolution. Long before language, our ancestors communicated through body language and gesture. So we have a highly trained system of using our bodies to convey how we feel. So what happened over millions and millions of years is there's a very strong link between body language, posture, movement of the body, and emotional state. So, and what most of us understand is how I feel then affects my body. We just don't realize that it goes the other way as well. We can use your body to affect how you feel. It's why dancing makes people feel so happy. You know, because the act of moving itself is rattling about, not just the movement itself, but the movement, and it actually alters the biology of the brain to boost things like serotonin and dopamine and opiates and stuff like that. So it works so fast because the brain and body are so well connected that the brain recognizes when you move your body in a confident way, for example, the brain recognizes that means I feel good. So the brain tilts the biology for the whole organism, being the human body, in line with what you're doing with your body. That's why it happens so fast. It just takes consistency of practice to make it more of a habit.
So this is scientifically proven that if someone's not feeling at their best, if they're feeling maybe stressed, if they're feeling non-confident, if they're lacking love, if they're lacking connection, if there's resistance, if there's any negative feeling that's been experienced, the number one thing that they have to do if they want to get out of it, they have to jolt themselves physically. They have to jolt their physiology.
It makes a big difference. It really makes a big difference. And the thing is, you can apply this to all range of different things. Even people who want to learn to be more compassionate. You can practice. There's a wonderful meditation that I use and teach sometimes. It's a Tibetan Buddhist one called the loving kindness meditation. And research shows that it actually impacts two regions of the brain, so the left-hand side of the prefrontal cortex here, and an area called the insula, and it causes a growth like a muscle, so you become more compassionate. What I found helps as well, as a separate strategy, is moving your physiology in an empathetic, compassionate way. So if you see someone who's really showing compassion in the moment, then what they might be doing with their face is going, oh, and they're doing that. So what you can do by practicing the physiology of empathy, the physiology of compassion, you can actually wire that into the brain, which makes it easier. It's not faking anything. It's making it easier when moved during the day. When you see someone suffering, it makes it easier for you to access that state rather than getting caught up in the anger or any other state that someone's in. It makes it easier to access compassion because you've already built the muscles in the brain, the compassion regions of the brain. It just makes it easier to enter into, to naturally feel moved by someone else's suffering. That for me is one of the most important applications of this, using the physiology. It's not, for me, it's not just about building self-love. I've moved a wee bit on. I've learned enough of that now that I'm realizing that we can teach ourselves any emotional state. One of my practices is to deepen empathy and compassion. So therefore I use this now to deepen empathy and compassion. And it just means that you more rapidly enter that state when you see someone suffering or an animal suffering, for example. You just very quickly go into that state because you've created the wiring in the brain for it, And I found it works so powerfully, equal to, in my experience, or better in some ways than practicing a meditation.
Wow, that's amazing, because one of the things that I know sweeps across this planet, and like yourself, I have the fortune of speaking in so many different countries around the world, and I also see this common thread where people are saying, "Oh, this person doesn't understand me. They don't get me. They don't." And at the same time, they're staying disconnected. When I'm sort of like sitting in, listening to this stuff, it's like, wow, both sides are staying separated. There isn't this meeting in the middle, or there isn't this, okay, well, this person's suffering at the moment. Let me go and meet them where they're at, and just let them know I'm here. Just let them know that I'm just caring. That I'm a friend. And what I found as well in the coaching industry is that compassion and that empathy kind of got lost through some people learning brain techniques of how to get people out of a certain situation. And they go in there with a technique or a tool or a strategy, and it's emotionless. And I've had so many coaches come to me, how do you get results in people in this way? Because I'm trying this strategy, I'm trying this thing I learned, and it doesn't work. And only when I ask them the question, how are you delivering it, do we realize that it wasn't delivered through the heart. And I've really found that when we get to the position where we can help people through any of what we're producing, I mean, all of what you produce now is to go out there and to help people navigate around life with more grace and elegance. And when we get to the place where we really start to do these habits, we create these rituals, we're going to find what works for us. Because I was talking to, I'm probably doing a Google Hangout with him just after this, actually, David Wolf. Oh. And we've got this movie coming out, and we've got some great people in the movie. He's one of the guys in the movie, and it's all around longevity. And we recorded a song for the end of the movie, and he's going to be playing the drums in this track. And he was saying that for him, his meditation is doing his drumming. Because what really is a meditation? It's so we can quieten the thoughts, we can find that freedom. And the research that I done on Bruce Lee, he was able to find his meditation within the movement. So there would be fluidities, things would be happening, but he was able to find his stillness. And that's ultimately what meditation is to find that stillness so that we stop the brain doing its thing and our spirit, our soul can talk to us. So
It helps you just become aware of whatever you're doing in the moment. You know, that's what I found meditation helps me with, is just becoming aware of myself in whatever I'm doing in the moment, whether that means becoming aware of my thinking or becoming aware of a habit. But it gives you that, it's that little space it creates to become aware of whatever it is. And if that's a movement that you're doing, you're aware of yourself in doing that. And it's such a, meditation is such a powerful thing. I practice, we all have our own types of meditation. You're right, it's doing whatever you're doing, being mindful of it, you know, giving it your focus, being in that zone, that becomes your meditation, whether that's just breathing or moving or whatever, you know, whatever works for you, basically.
Well, I think meditation is, we've got Guru Mukht in the movie, and she, you know, she's one of the sort of the forefront runners of Kundalini yoga. And she's really saying that the key to longevity is meditation, because you can always, when you create what you call it, like awareness, I mean, it's such another good name for it, because when you really create that full awareness of really what's going on, not just through your own eyes, but from the bigger picture, you know, as the observer, suddenly you get connected to a lot more truth that's going on around you. And that's the awareness where, from that place, I really believe that when we connect to that awareness, instinctively we start to act on what's right, because we're not having it just come from the brain, because now we're starting to control the brain with more awareness, instead of having the brain control us with its little bit of awareness.
Yeah.
So I think that, I mean, these are the two tips. One is shifting your physiology, is two, creating the awareness. What could be a third great tip? I know I'm pulling stuff out of you here. You're probably like, come on, I've given you two great gifts, but what could be a third one that people who are listening can really use it in a simple way, that when they, because as you said, people, please do this, because the magic is in the action taken. If you just let this go in as information, you're going to stay, like a lot of people out there, drowning in all this information, but we're really starving of wisdom. What David's sharing with us here is, it really is pure wisdom, but it only becomes wisdom when you actually apply it, because you want to be able to reap the benefits yourself. So,
well, I would say, if in doubt, empathy first. If in doubt, empathy first. And I'm saying that because, you know, I found, and this is something I would say to any coach and therapist or person just wanting to get by in the world, is most people, first and foremost, just want to be heard and understood. That's all. You can be the greatest coach in the world, but you can sit with someone and just let them be heard and show them that you understand. And that's an amazing breakthrough for a person, is just having that space to be heard and understood. I would honestly say that empathy is the new currency. As the world is becoming more and more interconnected, the world's becoming a smaller place. We are now communicating with, teaching, doing business with people all over the world. And in this last 100 years, it's gone from just communicating with people in your own town or your own street, and now it's all over the world. The world's becoming a smaller place, more interconnected. The currency for thriving in an interconnected world is not money, it's empathy. It's how well can you relate to and understand other people. And I would say, as in, you know, if in doubt, you don't know what to do, try empathy first and see where it leads to. It might not lead to the answer you're looking for, or it might do. But if in doubt, try empathy first and see where it leads you, and then act from that space. Because what you're doing is you're tapping into that which you are. Your very basic, our basic core state is empathy and compassion. We are wired for compassion. You know, there's a host of scientific research and books written on the fact that we're wired for empathy and compassion. So if in doubt, do empathy first. And then you're tapping into yourself. Then you become more expansive. You become more naturally heart-centered. And then your decisions might be the same or they might be different. But at least you'll be coming from the right place. You know,
wow, empathy is the new currency. That's something for people to chew on. That's so powerful, because one of the things that I know men do, we've got this I want to fix it type program, that this mechanism that we have going on, especially when it's in our intimate relationships, where, you know, we can have our partner, they want to offload a whole bunch of stuff, and as men we get locked into this place where I want to fix it. And in them making their suggestions on trying to fix stuff, that then causes more resistance to what's going on. And I really relate to what you're saying, because anytime that someone can hold space for somebody and they can really be in their heart and they can be open to just receiving whatever the other person is sharing, that by them just holding space, by them just really being in a place where you can just be you without being judged and you can just get rid of this stuff, at the end of it, there is always that thought or that feeling which says, wow, this person just understands me. This person gets me. And it doesn't even matter if this person is in a bad habit or what this person is saying could be perceived as being right or wrong. It doesn't matter. It's holding the space for that person. And by not trying to fix it, by not trying to, because if you're trying to fix something, it shows that the person's broken. And I don't believe that we are broken as human beings. And I think that you've just summarized so much wisdom in such a short phrase, where if in doubt, go to empathy. That one thing could shift so many conflicts within relationships. I feel it can have people be a lot more calmer, where suddenly they can express themselves in a way where they're not feeling like they're judged, or they're not feeling like they're doing wrong. Wow, that's powerful. You've really got some mechanisms moving in my mind as well there. So thank you for that.
Thank you. It's, you know, they say you teach what you have to learn. I'm still learning that myself.
We're all learning. So please, I mean, where do people go to check out your stuff if they want to, sort of start following you, or where can they get your book from?
drdavidhamilton.com.
Awesome.
That has all the links to my social media sites and all my blogs. I write a different article, a blog every week or two. So I have like 100, 150 on my site, covering empathy, kindness, mind-body connection, self-love, basic everything in the archive. So everything, every way of accessing what I do is on my website.
Brilliant. Well, I look forward to seeing you at an event soon. I know we always crossing paths, speaking at different gigs and stuff. So next time I see you in person, I'll have a big hug for you.
And winging one right back at you.
Brilliant stuff. So as this is giveaway January, people, please don't forget that we've got Mind, Body and Spirit, who are sponsoring Supercharge Your Life. So we're giving it away to you guys. It's January the 30th and 31st, Central London. It's at the Millennium Gloucester Hotel. If you want to reserve your tickets, simply go to superchargeyourlifeuk.com and you can come free of charge. So David, thank you again. I know you're a busy man. You've really blessed us with not just 3 golden nuggets, but there's been so much wisdom in all what you've been sharing. And I feel blessed to have spent this time with you. And I'm sure that the viewers and the listeners to this are going to feel blessed too. So have yourself an amazing day, loving who you really are.
Thanks, Skip, and same to you. It's been really great having this conversation with you. So have a fantastic day. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.